What is up, everyone? It is Tuesday, time for TCR Live, and I am joined with Troy, who was on a family vacation last week. I hope you had a great time with your family. It's good to have you back, but totally get that you want to have that time to get away.
Yeah. And we did a good family trip to the Northeast, which I've never been there, so it's good to see fall, because for those people that live in Arizona, we know we don't actually have that. That doesn't exist. And but I'm really happy to be back. This is Sunday wasn't great, but happy to be back on the stream.
Yeah, man, it's been rough. Where last season at this point, things were still optimistic. But at this point, boy, we'll talk about that. So what we're going to do this week is a little bit different. We've been doing the game previews every week, and we're going to do a little bit of a game preview. But we talked about Seattle just a few weeks back, so we'll just rehash that briefly. And we're going to spend some time talking about, what's going on with the Cardinals in terms of what should they do? How should they approach the rest of the season? The trade deadline just passed. There was a question of should they be buyers or sellers. They were neither, really. They didn't trade anyone away. They didn't make any big moves at this point, although they had made some previous to that. So we're going to talk about how should they approach the rest of the season. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about, sort of a midway point analysis. Want to say hey to Silverwolf AZ, let's go, who's here. Thank you for being here. And I know we got other folks that are going to pop into the chat. So let's just kind of hit on some of the quick news that's going on with the Cardinals, and recap what's going on and talk about where things are at and where they're going. And then we'll do a quick preview of Seattle. But again, we already know what's going on with that for the most part. Okay, so we just lost, and it was one of those typical games. I did my Cliff Bingo card and was able to get bingo on the left column. We had heard a lot of the same kind of excuses from Cliff, and I know people are very frustrated about that. So it's a rough week. And then, the Cardinals made a move. They signed a linebacker, Kamu Grugier-Hill, who was formerly of the Texans. In 2021, he had 108 tackles. He also had 3 sacks. I didn't grade particularly well, at a 44.2. So, I did a video on this, so if you haven't checked it out, but of course, the reason we did this move is because Steve Keim can't help himself with linebackers. But I did a video. Make sure you check it out. I talk a little bit more about his stats and such. So, Troy, what are your thoughts on the move?
I mean, it's kind of just like a whatever move. It's just, Steve Keim can't help himself. I'm curious if, was Nick Vigil hurt? Was he on IR, or was this maybe a backup to... Okay, so it's probably just a replacement for Vigil. Maybe his long-term outlook is looking maybe bleaker than originally intended. Again, such a nothing move, but it is what it is. And I don't think he was just... he was released, so we don't have to give up anything, so...
Right, it didn't cost us anything.
Yeah, it is what it is.
I mentioned in my video, I think that I posted, Vance Joseph, likes to have a veteran linebacker there with the 2 young linebackers. So I think this is the Nick Vigil, replacement. Vigil's injured. They've got Ben Neiman, Tanner Vallejo, Ezekiel Turner, who are on the roster. They're just guys right now at this point. And I think, they brought him in as a guy for a little bit more veteran presence there. So who is starting experience. So I think it's pretty much, it's not a bad move, right? Mm-mm. It's just, it doesn't move the needle, but yeah. Real quick, want to say hey to Robert Moore. Thank you for being here, Robert. Appreciate you being here. And then Silverwolf saying, was there any credibility behind Packers offering 3 picks for Hopkins rumor? I saw something about this. Someone posted in the Discord. I haven't heard any legitimate claims. I mean, I know obviously, that the Packers have been trying to get receivers, so it wouldn't shock me if they made a pitch, but, I don't think the Cardinals are, when clearly a trade didn't happen and, things should. Have you heard anything about that rumor?
No, this is actually the first I'm hearing of it, but it's interesting though, because Hop has solved some of our problems, but likewise, I don't think he's going to solve a lot of the Packers issues, because it's not just the offense. I mean, their defense hasn't been as locked down as they were forecasted to be going this year, and I don't know. I think Rodgers is already in self-destruct mode, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, right. Robert Moore posted that in the Discord, that rumor. Yeah, so I haven't heard anything, Silly Gooston said, I hope that's false about Hopkins. Yeah, a couple of people are saying should have traded AJ Green, and listen, I don't know if there was a market for AJ Green. It seemed like he, even though he's fallen off even from what he was last year, you would have thinking that would have been a good pick in Green Bay, right? Good fit. So I wouldn't have minded if they traded AJ Green with where things are at right now, but apparently that didn't happen. But yeah, so what we get, and Cruz is, I think, articulating what a lot of fans feel like, how much more do we have to suffer through before this organization gets on the right track? We're going to talk about a little bit about that tonight in terms of, again, what we think they should do with the rest of the season. We got Jason. What's up, Joe? Thank you for what's up, Jason. Appreciate you being here, hanging out with us. So we're going to do just sort of a quick, quick overview of the Seattle matchup. Again, we talked about them a few weeks ago, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on this part. But the DVOA rankings, we are still near the bottom. We're 30th total, 27th weighted, 26th offense, 19th defense, 27th special teams. And they are at the top. And even like as much as we talked about how their defense gave up a lot of yards, their efficiency is actually pretty high in the top, 7th on the offense, 11th on defense, I should say. So, they're playing very good football. The offensive rankings, we're middle of the pack, which isn't horrible. We could and should be better, but that's fine, but they're ahead of us. Defensive rankings, though, we're not too far from them. And we talked about how bad their defense is, but we've had our last couple outings have been really rough. So, there isn't this, I don't feel like we have an advantage defensively at this point with how we're trending. Geno Smith is still playing like an MVP. What are you going to do, with that? Who expected that, right? And then, their pass rush is still potent, especially guys like Mosu and Taylor, and, we're banged up on the offensive line. Humphreys hopefully will be back. If he isn't, Josh Jones will play, which I don't feel bad about that. But Cody Ford has struggled. Price has been up and down. So they're going to be a problem for us again. And our pass rush hasn't been particularly effective. And, so that's going to be sort of a problem. So, again, we're not going to go super deep on this matchup, but what are your general thoughts about going against Seattle this time around, Troy?
I think, last time around, we really did take advantage of the rookie tackles. I mean, we sacked Geno's like 5 times. We sacked him a lot. And I think in the Giants game, Geno sacked 2 or 3 times. So that is kind of a weakness, I think, for them, is they are susceptible to kind of big splash plays, maybe not fumbles or interceptions that we would like, but Geno Smith will get hit. He stands in that pocket. One thing that hasn't really been talked about a whole lot yet, but I heard Darren Urban refer to it like Billy Price is probably going to be our center for the rest of the year. Rodney Hudson is just pretty much like no one knows what's going on with him. They don't really know the history or nature of his knee injury that he has, but he's just kind of ghosted away. And this is coming from like Darren Urban, who is obviously as tier 1 newsworthy you can get. So, unfortunately, this is what our lineup here is probably what our offensive line pairings are going to be for the rest of the season, barring any other injuries. So, we really need Billy Price hopefully find a level, because we cannot have what we had against the Vikings on Sunday again, because it was just the interior line. It's just so frustrating that like this seems to be like an issue we have every year, and like we just paper over the cracks, and it's just frustrating. So yeah, we're gonna need to find some solutions to negate some of that, because that we know this firsthand. If there's consistent pressure up the middle, like our offense is like DOA, because Kyler can't throw to the effectiveness we want him to, and our run game has been non-existent when that happens. So
yeah, and Silly Goosen saying, that Seahawks are easily beatable, should have been this season, got to stop beating ourselves. I mean, this is and I know we've got a Seahawks fan in the house, so thanks for being here and joining us. Listen, I know the Seahawks fans might not want to hear this, but like, I mean, listen, the Cardinals are a team that is not playing up to their potential, but they have the players that if they can get it right for a week, they can beat the Seahawks. They can beat most teams, but they've been beating themselves. And will they beat the Seahawks this week? I don't know. I hope so. It wouldn't shock me if we lost again. It does seem like our offense has been getting going. It's now our defense has kind of slipped back, and Seattle's got a really good offense. So it's and to your point though, that offensive line is really the concern. With Billy Price, he's been up and down. He played well last year for the Giants. He's a former first round talent. And Bobby Moore saying, if Hudson was bad, they should have put him on IR. So he's not buying what Urban's. Listen, I think Darren Urban is about as informed a person as you're going to find. I know working for the team, sometimes he's going to toe the company line, but like he doesn't throw stuff out there if he doesn't have conversations, information. So I don't know that he's saying it's definitely going to be that way, but it's looking that way. It's trending that way. And something to take into account with the whole IR thing. And so there was a conversation on Twitter. I think it went with Jess Root, I think, was tweeting about this, and someone went back and forth in just a conversation with him. Is that you can only designate players to return from IR 8 times in a season. You can only do that with 8 players. And I think they've already used like 3 or 4 of those. And like Antoine Wesley, they actually designated him to return. Then he got re-injured. Now he's back in the IR. So they wasted one on him. Hollywood Brown is going to be one of those. So they're talking about there's some of these players who are banged up.
Justin Pugh's,
Pugh's. Well, and they're probably not going to designate him to return, right? So in terms of guys the IR, there are 8 times you can designate them to return.
To come back. Gotcha, yeah.
Right. So obviously, you've got, Cody Ford was one of them. Hamilton, according to Jess Root, Antonio Hamilton counted as one of those. Antoine Wesley, they're going to use one for Hollywood Brown. And they think they'll probably use one for Charles Washington. So like you can only do so many of those. So there's some of the players who they haven't put on IR. I think the argument is because they like Prater, for example, and Rondell Moore, because they don't want to use all those up. Right. So I don't know the fact that Hudson's not on the IR is a guarantee he won't be out for longer, but we'll see. Right.
And also if they put him on IR, he's minimum out 4 games. And if they didn't know the extent or like nature of his knee injury, maybe they thought, oh, he'll come back before that. And they want to risk having him for sure locked out for 4 weeks. But again, this is kind of unfortunately lining up what the whole offseason with Rodney Hudson was leaning to. He didn't really want to come back, kind of had his arm twisted to come back, and now I think he's just going to ride it out. And, unfortunately, this is kind of a dud.
Yeah, and, Vic, I know what Laura, I don't know what that 3 is supposed to be, but I apologize. Rodney should just retire, bro. Don't want to play anymore. At this point, and like when he's played, there's some things he understands how to, to pick up the blitzes and the those kinds of things, but he hasn't been the Rodney Hudson of old, it seems like. And there's part of me that just says, let's just move. We need to move on. I mean, if you plan your roster around him being there and he's gone for most of the season, you are then in a bad situation, right? Like we were last year and like we are now this year, having to, I feel like we've got a better replacement in Price than we did in Max Garcia last year. But it's, if you plan to not have him, you can at least plan for a starting caliber replacement, even if it's not a high end starter.
Yeah, it just feels like we're back to like the Mason Cole 2020 year, and that was the big priority then. It was, we need to shore up our interior line. Well, spoiler alert, 2 years later, it's still Pugh and an old center, and then Pugh's gone, and now the center's gone. So it's just like right back to square one, and that's really frustrating. I mean, the fact that Linderbaum was so high in our potential round 1 draft picks, I think they kind of knew this was happening sooner than later. And unfortunately, I don't think they plan on it happening in the middle of the season. But
yeah. And and there's and injuries have been a problem, as Robert Moore is saying here, right? That's part of why we've had these issues. Can Cliff go on permanent IR? And kind of to that point, I'll share this. I did a poll on my channel. Cliff Kingsbury should, and I had these options: be the coach next season, no matter what; be the coach next season if the team wins at least 7 games; be the coach next season if the team makes the playoffs; be fired after the season, no matter what; or be fired immediately. And was it 57% want him fired immediately or after the end of the season, no matter what? Of those who aren't on the fire him immediately, the remainder of that group, 31% of the folks say he has to make the playoffs. Only 12% of people basically of the people I had in my poll, 851 respondents, only 12% think Cliff should be retained if they don't make the playoffs. That's very telling of how people are feeling about Cliff right now. And I'm sure if I did something with Keim, it would be easily the same, right? In terms of how people feel. So, I think what we talked probably about the Seattle matchup. Let's focus more on kind of where things are at. So these are the standings. Cardinals at the bottom of their division, but what I really want to hone in on, this is the playoff. I know you can't, it's hard to see. So we're zooming in. This is basically the competition for that last wild card spot. Okay. You got 2 teams in the NFC East with like 6 wins that are in those other 2 wild spots. And like, these are the teams that are competing for 1 playoff spot. And the Cardinals have tiebreakers over 2 of them. So there's this log jam, and you've cited Troy a couple times that 49ers were 3-5 and they made it to the conference championship, and absolutely that can happen. And we are 3-5, but with all the tiebreakers that are not going in our favor, and there's just so much parity. Everyone, it feels like it has 3 or 4 wins. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 9 teams on this list, and we're near the bottom. Like 1 or 2 of these teams is going to get hot and is going to be good down the stretch. And so like you look at it and you have to ask yourself, do you feel like the Cardinals can beat out every other team on this list for that 7th spot? Right? Because all these teams are playing for that 1 wild card spot. I know it's possible for someone to overtake one of the other teams, but if they do, then that other team is on this list and they're still ahead of us, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so like, how confident do you feel that the Cardinals can emerge ahead of all these teams to get that 1 spot, right? And for me, it's not very confident. How do you feel about that, Troy?
No, not confident at all. I mean, amongst this list, I think it's kind of clear the 49ers are probably the prime candidate, especially after that really good showing last week against the Rams, which was unfortunate to see, because I was really hoping the Christian McCaffrey thing was just going to blow up in their face, but that might turn. I mean, he's probably going to get hurt because that guy's already paper thin, and Niners love just hurting all the running backs, so who knows? But yeah, again, for us to even have a shot, we have to pretty much at least win 2 out of the next 3, because they're all NFC West games, and like even then, that's going to be a huge task. And some of these other teams, like the Bucks, they're not looking great. They're kind of floundering the whole Tom Brady drama, but the NFC South is so bad right now. Like, they can easily run the table on those teams, and then they're kind of right back in it. So yeah, confidence levels pretty low. About that 5% chance I think we have of making the playoffs, or whatever stat keeps floating around.
Yeah, and as Robert's saying, if they were somewhat healthy, I'd be confident. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Coda Kid, thanks for being here. It's okay, my boys didn't make any moves either. All right. Michael, the Seahawks fan, says, "Nah, Cliff is a good head coach, just having a bad year." How much of that is you believe that, and how much of that is you want to see a division rival continue to employ Cliff Kingsbury as their head coach, right? But yeah, so it's a tough place right now. I don't, in terms of feeling confident about where things are at. So, there was a lot of questions about whether this team would be buyers or sellers. They were neither. And they still might bring in some free agents, to kind of, churn the bottom end of the roster, get some depth. I think they should probably get someone on defensive line. Although Antoine Woods had a nice game, so maybe they're just gonna, get him in there. Maybe he's better than the options. I don't know. Keenan Oken, thanks for being here. Cliff has dragged us down every year. It sure feels like that. So I think, at this point, especially since they weren't buyers, they didn't make any big moves at the deadline. They've made some moves, throughout the season, Robbie Anderson and such. But clearly they're gonna go with who they have now, plus maybe any kind of free agent acquisitions to kind of patch up some holes here and there. So it seems like they're like, okay, we're gonna if we can make the playoffs with who we got, if we can turn it around, great. But if not, we're not giving up draft capital, right, to take put the chips in the center. So with that in mind, what do you think should be the approach for the rest of the season? What do you think should be the approach moving forward? If you're kind of running the Cardinals, what are you doing from this point moving forward?
I think you start playing the kids, and just try and salvage anything you can. I mean, start figuring out who your core of the team's going to be next year and just play those guys, and then start realizing, unfortunately, let's kind of start planning for next year. We're going to have a lot of salary cap moving forward because we're going to have some big names coming off the maybe not a lot moving forward because we have to re-sign some of these guys, but Watt will be off the books next year. I don't know. There's going to be a lot. We don't have like a premier edge rusher we're playing. Those guys are all young. We don't have a premier corner locked up. We're probably going to re-sign Byron Murphy, but really start kind of take stock of what we're missing and what's next. And that's, I think, on personnel wise, coaching and players, because again, right now the NFC is kind of a mess. There is a big log jam, but like slowly the log jam's starting to unclog and we're kind of still floating towards the end of bottom. Maybe we'll get hot. If I thought we were somewhere in the race by the time Hollywood comes back, that put us in a good position, but it's just a lot. And yeah, I'm glad we didn't buy. I would have been open to us trading JJ if we were going to get a sizable return at this point. He's playing good, but he's not coming back next year. So it's at this point, what is the point? And hell, we might have a new head coach next year. We don't know, because I think we would be more susceptible, more okay with Cliff if for some of the offense issues, just because the offense itself is down across the NFL all year, we'd be more susceptible to that. But it's the other stuff that just is not getting fixed that is now starting to just drive me insane. Like getting the play call on time off of timeouts, I don't understand, and I will never understand. And that's these kind of things that I think are making it a hard pill to swallow. So yeah, I think it's take stock of what you got, play the kids, and I think just see where you lie. Robert Moore agrees with you there.
Dakota Bedard, thanks for being here. Appreciate you being here with us. Yeah, so our next three games are division rivals, right? We've got the Seahawks, the Rams, and the Niners. And that's a tough stretch, but at the same time, I think I'm glad we've got that stretch now, because by the end of that stretch, we will know if we have a chance or not. Our season is either alive or over. And we really need to win at least two, if not all three of those games. So, at this point, I still want to give ourselves a chance for the team to turn it around, right? The offense has been showing signs of life. The defense needs to get back on track. And if this team can win two or three of those games, then I think you still play to win. Taking a chance to try, because, if you win two or three of those games, all of a sudden you might be closer to being in the division lead again, right? And, winning that division, depending on how things play out, winning that division might actually be a lower bar than that seventh wild card spot, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily going full youth movement across the board. I'm not taking out all the veterans just yet. But if we lose two out of those three games, out of that game stretch, game over. Start playing for the future. Get Cameron Thomas in there starting. Get Myjai Sanders rotating in with them. I still start Marcus Golden, but on the other side, it's Cam Thomas starting, Myjai Sanders splitting And Victor Dimukeje, I listen, I was really high on him, and he had a great preseason, but he hasn't done much in the regular season. He's gotten plenty of snaps. He's in the second year. Let's get these other young guys in there. Let's get Trey McBride more snaps. Let's get Josh Jones in at right tackle.
He was killer though in the Minnesota game.
Oh, listen, he was awful. Those penalties, but he's and I
hear you, but yeah,
but you get, and I'm not just saying start him, but get him in there,
play him,
target him, right? Get him in there on receiving, not just blocking. Put Josh Jones at right tackle to see if he can play there. We know he can play left tackle.
Yeah.
Right. Play him at right tackle. Get Lacita Smith in there Cody Ford. I mean, I guess we kind of want to see what we've got in Cody Ford.
Yeah.
But Cody Ford's going to start that stretch of those games against division rivals, right? And unless he starts playing really well, like where we're like, okay, you know what? No, okay, we see him as a guy we can pair with Will Hernandez, and maybe we re-sign both of them. But if Cody Ford struggles for those next 2 or 3 games, get Lacita Smith in there, see what he does. Keep Billy Price in there, even if Hudson's ready to come back. Keep Billy Price to see if he can be a guy who can be a bridge starter for us. So like, yeah.
Hudson's already on the plane to Hawaii. He's done. He's got his pina colada ready.
Right. But like there's something like and Robert Ward's another great point. Like, when Brown and Hop are both on the field, the offense scores great numbers. It'll be something to look forward to next season. Like when we talk about how disappointing this season is, right? We do have to look at think about what next season could start like. Like if Hopkins is healthy and not suspended, Hollywood Brown, and if they figure out that, hey, Rondale Moore, let's throw to him on the correct side of line of scrimmage at least half the time, like that could be scary, right? That receiving core. So in fact, I think that's even as much as everyone wants to get rid of Cliff, and I'm on the fence with him right now. You look at what could next season be like if you start out with that receiving core and you fix some of these problems in the offseason in terms of roster.
Unfortunately, some of the issue though is the guy throwing the ball to those guys. Skyler has not been. He's been so up and down even within games. Sometimes you see a little glimpse of the old Kyler, then other times it's just like he gets the happy feet, doesn't know, it's just nothing's been smooth. Again, this team reminds me so much of that 2019 rookie Kyler and Cliff here. Stupid little inconsistent, it's not a well-run operation. It seems like drives are occasionally struggles. It's just so herky-jerky. It drives me insane a little bit. But yeah, I think that, again, we're starting to see some of the buddings of the Kimes draft picks. Again, I think we're seeing some more rookie participation. I think we've seen in a while, and some good stuff. I mean, Zaven and Isaiah are finally starting to come along, and that's all really exciting. I think, I think it's about
Zach
time.
Allen.
Zach Allen, exactly. I mean, him and JJ Watt are great duo. They're two of the best tackles up there in the duos in the NFL right now. It's just insane. But yeah.
It's Tom Bob, thanks for being here. Looking forward to a lot of these NFC teams will be rebuilding soon, right? So maybe there's an argument for the continuity, right? Yeah, with Kyler, his season, it's been a step back, and I do feel like some of it has to do with the pressure. Some of it has not been having Hopkins, and some of it we've talked about this before. How much of it is the shifts in defense? I mean, it looks like they've been able to put up some points now. And I will say, think about what with Hollywood and Hopkins. I can't imagine this offense being as stagnant as has been. But Keenan Oak, Cliff will waste it, let a new coach try. And there's part of me that says, hey, this is that part of me that's back and forth on. I'm like, what happens if we bring in a coach with a more conventional NFL offense, like a West Coast offense, with those same players, and see what they do, right? I mean, it could be really awesome. We got a question here, D West 63. I'll let you kind of field this first. My question is, do we keep Robbie Anderson and Hollywood, or do we let one go, and who would you let go?
We gotta let go Robbie. keeping, but I mean, it just depends what the market is, and I don't know. I'm not sure on Robbie Anderson. It's still kind of early. I think he has a good skill set and exactly what we need. We almost exactly saw why he was there and brought to do, but Kyler threw the ball 10 yards short. I think he was
Yeah.
hit, and it didn't work, but it was almost there. I think Robbie Anderson is the profile wide receiver we need. We need someone tall. We need someone who can get those jump balls because, I mean, Kyler loved AJ Green just because he could get those 50-50 jump balls, and Robbie Anderson is that, but much more athletic and much better. I guess we'll see. Do we draft a guy instead, though? I mean, it just depends on money and situations. I think Hollywood you have to keep at this point. He's cost controlled, good relationship with Kyler, and he was the only thing that was working in the not working offense. So I think it all becomes numbers, draft, see what the wide receiver look like in the draft next year, because that kind of profile wide receiver is not, I want to say super rare, but if we can get something for cheaper, let's do that.
Yeah, I think you absolutely keep Hollywood Brown no matter what, and I'll tell you, I can't imagine they don't plan to keep him. They traded a first round pick for him. I can't imagine they make that trade with anything less than the expectation that they would be extending him and keeping him when it was time to do that, right? And when he was, before he got injured, we saw how good he looked. He looked like a wide receiver one. I know the offense struggled, but he was one of the few bright parts or, bright spots in that offense. So it's just tantalizing to think about what that's going to look like across from DeAndre Hopkins and how tough of a matchup is. So I think if you can only keep one, you absolutely only keep it's Hollywood Brown. I think with Robbie Anderson, I think you make an offer to him, but you don't overpay him. And, Juby here, cut AJ Green. He's taking snaps from better players. I definitely don't think a minimum. I don't know if you cut AJ Green, but you don't play him at this point. I mean, you want him in depth in case someone gets injured. But yeah, I mean, if you can have Robbie Anderson, if you can get him to sign for a reasonable deal, and maybe he will, maybe he won't. That's a nice guy to take the top off. That's the guy becomes a replacement for AJ Green. And yeah, I imagine starting next season with Nuke Hopkins, Robbie Anderson, Hollywood Brown, and Rondale Moore. Like those, and then Greg Dortch as depth.
It's a great fifth, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Aside from Cincinnati, is there a receiving core that you think would be better than that? I mean, there might be a few, but it's tough, right?
I mean, Bill, Stephon Diggs, and Gabriel Davis are pretty, but even then, they're not as elite as like Gabriel Davis. You can make an argument Gabriel Davis is as good as Hollywood, probably, but no,
but you have to have a conversation, right?
Conversation, yeah. I don't think it's a clear cut wide receiver core. It's better, no, other than I would say Cincinnati.
So I think that would be it. So you got to keep Hollywood, and if you can keep Anderson without paying too much, you do. But I'm not going to spend a lot. If he'll take AJ Green money, So I want to real quick do this. Thanks for the super chat, Cruz. Ispuro. I hope I did not mispronounce that. Thank you for the super chat. If they keep Cliff but get new uniforms, might not be that upset. Right?
Yeah, they're hoping that. That's because that's probably the game plan. That's straight out of the Bidwell playbook. What's the cheapest way to keep everyone happy?
Right. So I don't know if you are Michael Bidwell, maybe you just do the new uniforms because that'll buy you some goodwill. So yeah, maybe. I mean, we need that. Those helmets are nice, but yeah. So
I like the helmets, but I feel like it's too much like the Falcons. I want a little more identity, but I mean, they're still pretty cool.
Yeah.
Not too upset.
Well, for the super chat, of course, I want to say thank you, Cruz. I appreciate that. Real quick, want to say to some of the other folks who've jumped in, we got Blade. We should see if Kurt Warner would do offensive play calling for Cliff. Just a suggestion. I love Kurt Warner. He knows football, played quarterback, but I'm leery of taking a chance on someone who hasn't been coaching for at least a few seasons. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, not a first time kind of thing. I don't know something's going to, I think this year, if Cliff does stick around for the next year, I do think they are bringing in a play caller or an offensive coordinator. Maybe not a play caller, but an offensive coordinator, just to figure something out. Because at the end of the day, something's clearly not happening, and I think we're seeing tension between Kyler and Cliff. I mean, obviously that was very physically represented in that Saints game, but just some of the stuff like on the Vikings game, there's like a screen to D Hop, and it's clearly not going to work because there was 2 wide receivers to 3 defensive backs out there, and it's just like, why are we running? Like, this is a horribly designed screen. Like, why are we running? Like, maybe it's on Kylie, should have audibled out, but it's just stuff like that. It's just like, what is going on? But maybe I'm being nitpicky, but
I mean, I think you have a point. If Michael Bidwell does not fire Cliff this season, if he, after the way things are going, and if it, they don't make the playoffs and it continues to go south, and he, I don't, I've been on the record saying I don't think he's going to fire him mid-season. I think he will take his time. But I think when the season's over, if it goes the way it's trending, he's going to take some time and think about it. And I know people want to bag on Michael Bidwell. I actually think he's a good owner. There's been a few mistakes this offseason. I know people won't agree with me, but I think he takes his time to think about these kinds of things. And I think he's going to take his time. And if he decides to keep Cliff, I wouldn't be shocked if there is an expectation that he brings in some help on the offensive side to help with play calling and with adapting the offense to the NFL more. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, again, we all make fun of Bidwell, but the key thing is he cares, and that's much more that his dad ever did, it seemed like, or, I mean, on the surface. He cares, and he will spend some money to win, but again, we've rehashed this point. Cardinals aren't cash heavy as compared to these other teams, like the Rams and all that such. So if he does make a mistake, we kind of hit it harder, and I feel like we feel that hit more than maybe some other teams, but
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. The Rams were just offered 2 first rounds for Brian Burns. It's like, if that's what you think you guys got to turn your season around, I don't know what you've been watching. Like,
you're not one Brian Burns away from.
You're not Brian Burns away from anything. So, yeah. and what first round draft picks? Like 2-3 years from now? I don't understand that. But
it's like those. I think the conventional wisdom is that a draft pick a year out is worth 1 round less. If that makes sense.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like,
isn't there like a chart that kind of tells you like equivalent values or whatever or something?
There are multiple charts out there about draft pick values, and I think and the conventional wisdom is if you're trading for a future pick, you devalue it by 1 round.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, when the next Rams pick is available, that might be worth a 6th round pick this year. I don't know.
Yeah. Crap, man.
So, real quick, I want to say to a couple other folks that jumped in here. Decimus, thank you for being here. Totally agree on O-line. If we made it solid with decent depth, it all looks different. Same with D-line, clog the middle. It changes things. Yeah, I mean, listen, we talked before the season that the D-line was an issue. They've had some players like Zach Allen who played nice. Richard Lawrence is playing well until he got injured, but the backups aren't doing great. And the offensive line, we had some depth, but we're having to rely on that depth now, right? If Cody Ford and Billy Price were your backups, then you're great. When they're starting, it's a little uncertain. But if we can shore those lines up and then have those receivers next year, that could be really something to behold. Let's see. We've got a super chat here. Jason, thank you for the support. Question: Cliff or Sean Payton? Who you take? Troy, who do you take?
His name always comes up a lot, and I'm not sure.
Let me throw something in here, and we haven't talked about this. You have to trade for Sean Payton because he still has some contract. So
that's
here's
a whole new layer to this.
Right. What do you have to give? 2nd round pick, maybe?
I guess this caveat is Cliff getting help in the offseason, because if it's just Cliff again next season, then I'll trade for Sean Payton, depending on what the final end of the season looks like. Because I think we all can tolerate if the offense is just blowing people out and it's their defense that just kind of succumbs to the youngness of it, quote unquote. We could all live with that and go into next season, I think, on a slightly higher note. But if it's just the more of the same where we can't get plays off of timeouts or when it's the 2-minute drill, everyone, it's like a 2-minute drill, like no one has a clue what's going on. I mean, to take 2 consecutive sacks like on the final series, it's like, come on. And we don't have timeouts because we're blowing them off. That's the stuff that you would think, oh no, like Michael Bidwell, who's like a lawyer, someone who's very detail oriented, would just drive him bananas and be like, what are we doing? Because it's just embarrassing for everyone again. So Cliff, with the caveat knowing someone is coming in with experience as a like if Brian Dable, like another version of Brian Dable, if he were walking in, a very experienced who's been around college, the pros all over, comes in to work with Cliff and be offensive coordinator, I'd take that.
Yeah.
But
so D West saying here he's under contract, so it would be a trade, right? As we talked about, from what I've heard around the rumor mill, it seems like the Saints want a first rounder and possibly a 4th or 5th, and we'd have to take the contract, right? So
no thanks.
Yeah, as much as I like Sean Payton as a coach, I think he'd be a great coach. I have a feeling Michael Bidwell's not going to do that, so I'm probably going to, I'd probably, if we're moving away from Cliff, I'd probably rather try to find a coordinator. Maybe who are you have got Ken Dorsey in Buffalo, the Brian Dable's replacement, someone like that. So if we're moving off Cliff, I have a feeling, as much as I'd love it to be Sean Payton, it's going to be someone else. But man, again, there's just this part of me that says like, Cliff is smart, he works hard, and maybe it really is just that his offense doesn't work in the NFL, even with the adjustments he's made, or at least not consistently, right? I mean, it worked for 7 games last year, but it worked when everyone was there and healthy. But when you have to start getting backups in there, and one of the things that has been said about his offense is that the blocking schemes are really nuanced and complicated and really good, but maybe part of the problem is that they're just really hard to pick up. Like for offensive linemen and players like that, maybe just maybe his offense is just a little too complicated in terms of for players to jump in and pick it up. And maybe that's part of the problem. And maybe you just need to get someone who has in here with a more pro-ready offense. I don't know.
And I think part of it's so funny. We think it's funny we say it's too sophisticated. I mean, we're talking about blocking, but like the national media or anyone kind of always land bases Cliff's offense for being too simple and predictable, which is kind of funny, the dichotomy of those. Because I agree, because I've heard the smart kind of sharps, as they're called, the NFL people, they say Cliff's running game is really sophisticated and actually quite good. It's just the passing game is really very horizontal, not really vertical and all that. But I think we've kind of seen, maybe small evidence of the complexity, because again, Robbie Anderson had 10 days to learn the playbook, and AJ Green was on the field more than him, which is just like, and AJ Green was benched on the Saints. So it's just like, oh, what are we doing here, everyone? Like, it's nonsense. Well,
Brett Coleman said that about when I had him on my show last year. He talked about like he really looks at that film, and he talked about like how he described it as like, I think he described it as a really beautiful thing to see. Like just when the running block works right, when they get it right, it's just really great. But again, maybe that's part of the problem. Cruz, thank you again for the super chat. Cruz is all for the trade. Cardinals receive Sean Payton, Saints receive Cliff and a jugs machine. I don't know. We might have to pay them to take Cliff. I don't know.
Yeah, one thing I guess I didn't think, and granted, like if they were to move on from Cliff, like, and again, this is kind of not theory in the sky, but if he gets another job within the NFL, like we don't pay him anymore. The NFL, I think it's the NFL works, I believe.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, like the new team kind of like takes the contract or something like that.
Okay.
I believe that's how it works, because they try to, I think, circumvent having to like coaches just bounce around and getting 2 paychecks from like, 2 separate teams. Sense. So I think that's why you see coaches sit out, because all the owners kind of know, they're like, we're not paying coaches multiple times.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
So that's probably why Sean Payton's hanging out right now. He would have like 1,500 jobs, or if you would have at least 10 jobs lined up. But
oh man, of course, for the super chats, thank you both. So we have there's a question that I want to kind of hit on D West, and admittedly I had to look this person up because I don't follow college. But Ryan Day, I guess, is Ohio State, would be a good fit for our weapons. What do you think? Be a good OC or head coach? I'll just jump in with this one, and I'm bringing this question up because it brings up a point that I really kind of want to speak to, is that the track record of college coaches to the NFL, it just has not been good recently. In fact, Cliff has actually been one of the most successful, for all the things we want to say about him, in terms of, improving the record for the first 3 years and making the playoffs. Cliff has actually been one of the most successful recent college coaches. So I am just really cold on the idea of college coaches as head coaches. An offensive coordinator, yeah, right. Get them in here, let them get kind of acclimated to the pro, kind of everything in the pros. Perhaps I'm open to that. But as a head coach, I don't want to be the next person to hire a college coach. Arthur says the same thing. So even if he's a great coach, I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm kind of over the whole college head coach offense coordinator thing, just because I'm reliving it and it's not fun. And another thing too, the Ryan Day thing. So he was Ohio State's head coach and he made Justin Fields look fantastic, but Justin Fields has struggled mightily in the NFL. And the only thing that's kind of keeping him afloat these past couple of games is his athleticism and him running, not him passing. He completes like 15 passes a game, so I would not personally vouch or want the Ryan Day experience at just coming off a cliff. Like,
yeah,
I think we all, again, I think if they move on from Cliff, the next option is going to be Vance Joseph. I think that's what it is.
I've talked about this I think it might have been the post game show recently. Vance Joseph has done a really good job, as I think, with the personnel they've given him to work with. I really do, but I don't think he's done a good enough job to merit being a head coach, like the top head coach candidate, right? In my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's just, they don't want to have to pay another person.
That makes sense. So yeah, Jason with another super chat. Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate your kindness and generosity. Why does Cliff the Clown look lost on the sideline? Maybe because he is. I don't know. I don't know. I just, yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's so frustrating, so discouraging.
I feel kind of bad. Like, I feel like in the world of social media, like no one deserves this amount of like attention directed. Like, like if everyone's worked in kitchens and like, you're in the weeds and like it's hitting the fan, the last thing you need is a bunch of people going like, you suck. And it's just like, yeah, I know, but I'm trying to get through this. But I mean, that's why I become an NFL head coach, and his bank account, that's why he gets paid the money. As Don Draper says in Mad Men, that's what we pay you the money, or that's what the money's for. Yeah, I don't know what is going on this year. Something's come knocked loose, because last year I felt like we were a little more buttoned up. At least we were better situationally. Maybe it's easier to be situational when you're up 2 or 3 scores in the first half, but it's just been a slog, and nothing seems to be like functioning right.
For sure. Real quick, I want to say a thank you to Grandizer and just say hey to Grandizer. Really great supporter of content creators. He's not even a Cardinals fan, but he shows up, helps support the channel. Man in the chat. He does this for other channels, just gives a lot of his time. So Grandizer, I want you to know I appreciate you, and I know every other content creator that you hang out in their chats appreciates you. Thank you for all the reminders you throw in there. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. So here's a question. We're talking about moving forward, right? So looking ahead, and and sad that we're having to look ahead to next season, but I like this question. Do we go after a true edge rusher with our first? We have a bunch of rotational guys, except for that stud. With our season current standing, we would be just out of the top 10 picks, edge or cornerback. So I'm going to expand this question to how do you approach the early rounds of the draft next year if you're the Cardinals with what we're seeing right here? So you can answer Jupi's question and then maybe expand it beyond just that first pick.
I mean, it all kind of depends where we're at, obviously, in the first round. From what I've kind of heard through other podcasts and such, that it's a deep edge rushing class coming up. I feel like you kind of have to. I mean, I know we've kind of briefly said you like how the Ravens do it, and you don't really spend the elite or premier draft picks, but you just kind of like every second, third round, just pick up guys, and just throw as many guys at it as you can. Because I mean, we could have another Chase Young situation where he's like, what was he like? Was he first? Was he number one or?
So.
No, he's first round, but like top 5, early, and he's kind of been a bust at this point. He hasn't played much. When he has played, he's been up and down. I'm curious on what the Hop situation is going to be next year. Is he going to be around? Are we going to extend him? Performance wise, I think he's worthy of an extension, but in terms of roster construction, do you want to allocate so much money to that? Because I think the NFL has definitely changed, and we're seeing it. If we don't have that true alpha number one wide receiver, things get a lot harder. We just saw it Monday night with Joe Burrow with no Jamar Chase. It doesn't look good. We've slightly lived it on our own end. And when he's out there, it's just really does make a difference. Like, when you have someone like that. So I know I just totally circumvented your answer, but I say either edge rusher or wide receiver, depending on what the Hop situation is.
Gotcha. So Hopkins, he's signed through 2024, but he has big cap hits. I'm looking at Spotrac, and they say, he has a potential out in 2023 with a big dead cap hit of like 22 million. His cap hit next year is 30 million, then 26. But I think you keep I think we've seen how much he matters to this offense this year on how good he still is. So I think you find a way to keep Hopkins and then again Hollywood Brown. In terms of the draft, and you reference kind of, I'm a big fan of the Ravens approach, and we put 2 third-round picks towards edge rushers this year. Cameron Thomas has shown promise. Sanders flashes, needs to be a little more consistent. But I think Thomas is going to be a starter next year. Marcus Golden will still be around. That they extended him, and and then Sanders is going to have another year under his belt. I think you rotate with those guys, and then Gardeck and Dimikaji, see if they what you get from them as depth. And for me, the first 3 rounds, like you have to kind of look at how the draft falls, and I'm not really a believer in saying go with this position in the first round, because what if that position just is not, it's a reach, right? Well, I guess you could trade back or something. But the way I've been saying it is, in the first 3 rounds, I want the Cardinals to get an interior defensive lineman, a center, and a cornerback.
Corner too, yeah.
Yeah, I don't care what order. Let's see how the draft falls, but just make sure when those first 3 rounds have ended, you get one of each of those. With corner, I lean towards feeling like it needs to be within the first 2 rounds. So because it feels like you got to get second round seems like a good spot to get corners, I think. So for me, those 3 positions, and edge rusher, if you want to go another guy in the middle rounds, that's fine. But I just feel like Thomas is going to be a starter next year, just with what we've seen from him. He's graded well. And Sanders has a lot of potential too.
Rotational guy for sure.
Yeah. So that's how I would approach it. But you can bet we'll be talking about that stuff more as we go, for sure. I think there were a few more folks that jumped in here. Oh, or here's a question. Is Lawrence adequate when healthy? Rashard Lawrence?
I think he's great when he plays. Unfortunately, he can never stay on the field. He's got that athletic. He's got like a motor too. Like the play he got hurt on this last bit, he was like coming up, he was running back and made the tackle, then got hurt. So I really like Rashard Lawrence, but again, at the end of the day, availability is better than ability. And fortunately, he's very deep on the he's deep in one area, not the other.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, he's great when he's healthy. He's a really good run defender. He's not as much of a pass rusher, but so good against run. But he's just staying healthy has been a problem. So so I love him as a player, and I know that he was a team captain at LSU, and they raved about his character. So all the things you love, but he needs to be part of a rotation where you've got guys you can count on besides him if he gets banged up, or so you can maybe also give him some limited snaps to keep him healthy. So he's a guy you want in rotation, but with the health, you just can't really rely on him, right? So
That's why if we were gonna do a trade, I was more in the Deron Payne camp.
mm-hmm.
If that I I didn't want us to be buyers, period, but that would
Yeah.
make a little more sense because I knew that was like, hey, we can get a nice keystone foundational need for the next 2 to 3 years. That's relatively cheap. Then like
Mm-hmm.
that sounds way better than a Bradley Chubb situation that people seem to be
Yeah,
upset about.
I was probably not big on I wasn't probably for making a big trade, but if they were going to make one, I wanted it to be a defensive line or maybe offensive line. Right.
Well, yeah, that I mean,
Yeah.
the point I probably acquired another vet for depth at some point, I imagine.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, Robert, go ahead and put those in the chat. We have a pick 'em in the Discord. If you aren't part of the Discord, there's a link below. There's a great group of folks in there throughout the week. Cardinals conversations going on there all the time. It's like a chat room if you're not familiar with Discord. Make sure you join, hang out with us. Go ahead and put that in chat. We'll get to that for sure. Want to say hey to Gabriel. Thanks for being here. Gabriel 623AZ. Keep hop. I agree. Here, we've got another super chat from Cruz. Thank you so much. You're being really generous. We appreciate that. I know this is done, but Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee has been a lights out wide receiver. Might take a swing at him in first round for more depth and let Robbie walk. So what do you think about that?
Again, I'm not super dialed into the college. I mean, I'm an ASU fan, so
Yeah.
I've been very ambivalent to college football this year. Again, we are seeing again. Everyone keeps using Jamar Chase, and me is included in that as a piece of evidence of you need an alpha wide receiver. But like, what if it doesn't hit? Then now you're spent premium draft pick on a guy that doesn't work. Which I mean, that's the fear for everything. But I mean, I'm down. I don't know. You really need the one. I would only take a swing at a wide receiver in the first round if he's that one talisman like freak athlete where you're like, whoa, this guy's has something that we haven't seen yet. I mean, that one guy from Alabama at Detroit hasn't even played yet, and he went like in the 10th, with the ACL. So they should just trade him because Detroit sucks. Give him here.
Yeah, I think I like our receivers with Hollywood and Hopkins and Rondale Moore. I mean, I would rather see the picks used in other positions where they really need, because what we're seeing this year is when that offensive line is banged up, you can't get the ball to your receivers.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
So, I mean, listen, if they drafted him, okay, I mean, obviously I root for him and hope he becomes a stud. For me, that's not the direction I'm going. But Cruz. But thank you so much for the super chat. Real quick, want to say hey to a few more folks that jumped in here. Anish was responding. I think there was a question. Actually, let me get the question. Teams tend to be good at developing certain positions: Patriots, quarterbacks, Ravens, D-line. What are the Cardinals good at developing? And I think some
headaches.
And with headaches, right? Defensive safeties are a position we develop pretty well. Anish disagrees, or really. But thank you for being here, Anish. But I think there's they've drafted good safeties. Buda Baker and Jalen Thompson are great, but I'm not sure that, to be honest, and I love the Cardinals, so I'm not trying to be a troll here. I'm not sure that we currently are good at developing any particular position. We've struggled to develop our draft picks. I think Buda and Jalen are awesome, but I think that's more about those were just really good players, and it wasn't about us developing them. You can say Zach Allen has developed, and a lot of that has been on his hard work and JJ Watt's, help. But I don't know. I just don't see a position where I look at it and feel like we've done a good job developing anything. What do you think?
I agree, but I mean, I would say for 90% of the NFL teams, the answer would be the same. I mean,
Okay, that's
he's
fair.
listed those three, and then you can maybe say the Steelers and wide receivers. Once upon a time, are insanely good at getting those hit rates. I mean, not so much lately, but I mean, for a while, it was like Antonio Brown, Chase
Yeah.
Claypool was insane his rookie year, and Deontay Johnson. You're like, what the heck is going on? But yeah, I would agree. We're really good at developing linebackers. We're really good at that.
That's we've been great at
Yeah.
that one.
Totally.
Yeah.
Uh,
Randrak, thank you for being here. I think Cam Thomas put on like 10 pounds to JJ spot next year. I mean, people, when they drafted him, I initially thought they were going to move him inside because of his size, and they might still do that. So we'll see. It'd be interesting to see what they do with that. So that's a thought. Roberts Moore put these in our Discord. We have a pick 'em. So this was week 8. Mark Jackson had 11 points, 4-way tie with Robert, D'Lo, myself, and Chase Rallick with 10 points. Gazornak bring up the lead with 9. So that's some of the fun stuff we do in Discord. We have a fantasy football league that I'm not doing particularly well in right now. I think I'm in the middle of the pack. So D West saying, would you guys sign Tristan Hill? He's a good run stopper. He can be better pass rusher, but the Cowboys just released him. If he clears waivers, would you sign him? What do you think?
Sounds great from the description, but unfortunately, if he's getting released, he can't be that great. But I mean, then Dallas probably has a surplus of great defensive line talent. I mean, Dallas's defense is tremendous. I mean, yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like we need. I mean, I think Sunday is a textbook example of what happens when you kind of lose the battle of the trenches and why we lost that game, other than our own mistakes. Like, our offense became one-dimensional because we couldn't run the ball at all. It was terrible, and our pass blocking was still like meh, and then our defense couldn't stop a nosebleed because Dalvin was just running straight through us for the first half, and he kind of slowed down the second half. But at that point, the damage has been done, and time of possession kind of tipped in their favor. So
yeah,
you back in college or like in Pop Warner days, usually is like the best teams who has the better offensive defensive line, and NFL it's kind of the same. I mean, we saw that clear cut example in the Super Bowl, the Chiefs and Bucks. Because everyone thought the Chiefs was going to win, but they had 2 or 3 offensive linemen out, and the Bucks just ran straight through them.
Yeah.
And
Tristan Hill's I had to look him up. I'd heard the name before, but he's a former second-round pick. But he hasn't played particularly well. His PFF grades have been in the 50s through most of the seasons of his career. I think if sure, for some depth, that's better than Lucky Fotu has played in his career. Antoine Wood's a guy that we signed earlier and then we signed him in the preseason, released him, then signed him to the practice squad. He played this last game, had a PFF grade, I think in the mid or upper 60s. He's a guy who's played a good bit in this league. Actually played with Denver or Dallas, I think, for a while too. Kind of a nose tackle. So I'd like to see Tristan Hill get more playing time. I think they elevated from the practice squad. They can do that, I think, 3 more times, but they'll probably have to sign him. So yeah, sure. I mean, at this point you need some depth there, right? So I wouldn't be opposed to it. Ian Keller, thanks for being here. Season on the line here. Unfortunately, Kyler needs to score some points against the Seahawks defense for sure. Mikey Cardinal, thank you for being here. What's up? Appreciate you. Go Cardinals. We got this. We are beating Seattle. I hope so. Seattle fans need to get humbled, right? So Blade saying, do you guys think this team wants the Super Bowl? I mean, do we really want one? The fans do, but I feel like our players most just come here for vacation and home and a high salary. Do you want to jump in on that?
Sure. I mean, that was always the joke earlier, like when the early 2000s Cardinals that were just inept was always retirement home, which those of us that live out here in Arizona, there's a lot of people of retirement age, and it's great weather. Exactly. It's hard to really quantify want, because with the salary cap the NFL is, it's like everyone's kind of playing on the same salary rules. Like NBA, for example, Golden State wants to keep winning because they pay out the nose in their luxury tax, and want is kind of quantifiable there because you're saying, oh, they're paying more than they need to. Whereas the NFL, everyone is kind of on the same playing field. I mean, every team wants. I mean, you do this because you want to win. I mean, these guys work so. And if you work for an NFL team, like your hours, you're working nonstop, and it's insane. I think there's the Mike McDaniel's had a clip saying when he was like an assistant coach, he didn't like shower for like a week because he was just working all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Again, crazy example. So, of course, everyone wants one. It's just hard. It's just really hard to do, and it's a lot of things have to go right for you.
Yeah, I would tell you, I know fans are get frustrated, so they sometimes vent. I just don't buy into the idea that any person in professional sports, there might be a few random players who don't care, but I just don't believe that the ownership doesn't want a Super Bowl or the players or the coaches. It's hyper competitive. Sometimes you're just not good enough to get, there maybe there are owners that are better at managing things. General managers are better, coaches are better, players that are better, but like everyone wants it. And if nothing else, there's a lot of money to be made as an organization going to the Super Bowl, right? So the ownership, they want that money, they want the prestige, they want the status, but there's also money to be earned for that playoff bid. And so when people say they don't want it, I just don't believe that. I just don't. Generally speaking, there might be a few players out there who, for whatever reason, don't really care. But for the most part, it's so competitive. I just can't buy it. I just think what it is you've got the most competitive, talented people in the world at what they do. You're competing against, and sometimes you're just not as good,
Exactly. And if you look at Buffalo, like success breeds like money and growth because they're building some giant new stadium in Buffalo, which isn't a particularly big town, and they're doing that because Buffalo's good now. They have a good infrastructure. They're going to keep winning. There's a lot of fan engagement. It's going crazy. And so, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, owners are incentivized by the cash, and you get more money, more brand, market share. Any valuable metric to you goes up when your team is doing well and playing. ESPN doesn't like when we do well because we're not a big market team, as we saw with the Suns, but the owners love it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Just we'll get a few more comments and then we'll probably get out of here. Hey, I know folks are kind of picking on Michael. He's subbing 17 different channels. There's a fantasy football. Hey, Michael, you've been nothing but, as far as I've seen, respectful. So we appreciate you being here. So I know folks are giving crap. Is he really a Cardinals fan because they see him in mine in the AZ Sports Fan channel? It looks like he's just doing his research for fantasy football. Like I said, as long as fans from other teams, as long as they are, respectful, they're always welcome here. And you've been cool so far, Michael. So yeah.
Michael, start Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, start Chase. Oh, jeez.
He's at Denver now. But
he was part of that trade.
Yeah, there was a meme like 2 or 3 years ago when he went off against the Jets or the Giants. I don't know, but it was like it was a weird thing that he started as a late thing, and the Cardinals we told you should have started him, and Matthew Berry lost his mind because he was like, I
remember that there was a little bit of a feud between Matthew Berry and the Cardinals.
Yeah, the whole Chase Edmonds thing.
That was great. Real quick, want to say, hey to Dilo who popped in here. This week is it for me, an absolute must win. I'm not sure we can recover for a playoff push with a loss. Always love my bird. So thank you for being here. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier. I think I kind of said they need to win 2 out of these next 3, if not sweep these next 3 divisional games. It is, even at that, like we talked about, their chances are slim. But if they don't win these divisional games, man, it's done.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm confident, but I'm feeling semi good about. I don't know why I'm saying that, but I feel semi good about the Sunday game because for some reason we're already favored and we're a slight favorite in the Vegas odds, which is strange. And I feel like Seattle's just coming off of a long, kind of tough, emotional win against the Giants. That game was close towards the end there, and they're gonna be feeling good. They kind of got it, and again, we're gonna be desperate, and desperation sometimes can breed to us playing well. And I just feel like that offensive line cannot repeat that performance again. As a team, they know they cannot just completely shoot themselves in the foot like we did against the Vikings. So I'm hoping for a nice rebound. If we look dismal again, though, then that's just really going to be a hard pill to swallow, because at that point, it's like these guys know their season's on the line and they're already thrown in the towel. So, yeah, this could be a cliff. Like, if the offensive team looks really bad, just like last time I said, if the offense doesn't look good against the Seattle team, Cliff is going to have a lot to answer for. And unfortunately, that was the worst performance of the year.
Man, that was bad. That was the low point of the season, in my opinion. Like, worse than we got beat, we got blown out by the Chiefs, but that wasn't a shock. Chiefs are a good team. That was the worst, right? Yes. All right, we're gonna get out of here. There's a Suns game that's, if it's not already started, I think it's probably already started. That's on national TV, I think, isn't there?
It's T-Wolves. It's a big game.
Okay,
so.
So, Troy, it's always good hanging out with you, man. Go ahead and give a shout out to whatever you want to shout out, whatever you want to promote. Make sure folks know where to find you.
Absolutely. Again, I work for Four Peaks. We have the beer Redbird Lager, the official craft beer of the Arizona Cardinals. I think I should probably figure that out, but I don't know. We definitely partner with the Cardinals. We do a lot of stuff with them. Again, we're a craft beer in Arizona, the largest one, and follow us on Instagram at Four Peaks Pub and all that stuff.
Awesome. You all know where to find me, the Cardinal Rule. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. My Twitter address, our handle, is below in the description. Check out the video I just put out about our new linebacker we signed, because Steve Keim loves his linebackers. So thank you all for hanging out with us. We're going to get out of here. I'm going to watch that Suns game. I know probably a lot of you are going to, but we appreciate you being here. On our way out, I'm going to do the shout out for the channel members, the folks who support the channel on a monthly basis. Definitely appreciate you guys. It helps me to continue to build what I'm doing here. So we will see y'all next time. Here's hoping for a Cardinals win. We need it, right?
Go Birds.
Go Birds.